Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Before I go any further, I do have a Kickstarter for my latest book. It's actually Eternal Dream Book 3. You can get a signed hardback. Details are down below in the description box. I was doing some cardio the other day and I decided to watch some Seinfeld because I haven't watched it in a long time and I really enjoyed it from the 90s. I even had a couple of the DVD sets back when, collecting DVD sets of series was a thing before the streaming revolution. And Seinfeld was, I think, an enjoyable show. And I think a lot of the humor holds up. Despite the change of technology and a lot of the social changes, I think if you're looking at unattached people in an environment, in an urban environment, attempting to find love and manage the strangely subtle nature of social relationships, I think it holds up. And one of the things that I remember was this episode, I think it was the first episode, the pilot episode, was about this woman who was coming into town that Jerry had met while he was on tour, right? So she's coming into town. She wants to meet up with him. She wants to stay at his apartment, and he doesn't know whether she's interested in him. And everyone around him is like, of course she is. Like, why would she want to stay at your house? Like, his neighbor Kramer is like, I don't know why you're giving her the option to not sleep with you, right? And it turns out right at the end of the episode, she's engaged. She has a fiance. And this may seem like a silly setup, but I know lots of young people that have ended up in this position. And indeed, I have experienced this, though not to the hyperbolic degree that this episode shows, where you have someone wanting to stay at your house and you don't know where you are romantically with that person. Had situations where you're hanging out with someone a lot, you're spending time with her, you're talking to her maybe on the phone. And these are all signals that prelude going on dates and moving into a relationship. And then she somewhere down the line mentions her serious relationship she's in, her boyfriend or fiance or husband or something like that. I've had this happen before. You're like, oh, I wasn't quite sure what we were doing here. And I thought I was, moving into a romantic area with you, but clearly maybe you just enjoyed having male attention, or you just act this way to everyone and you're not aware of the signals that you're putting out. You're not aware that these are romantic signals. And the fact that we have to speak kind of subtextually in order to communicate in a way that we don't risk ourselves, like risk embarrassment to ourselves. And we have to be able to receive those subtle communications in order to move our social relationships into the right sphere and to make sure that they are like the way that other people want them to be. That really sucks. And it turns out that is not something new. That is not a Generation Z problem. That turned out to be also a Generation X problem. I'm not sure where Jerry Seinfeld fits. He's probably in the younger boomer area, but I really think it starts with the baby boomers, where once you have a sexual revolution that untethers a lot of the social mores that bind our behavior, but it also gets rid of a lot of the social rules that you engaged in that defined relationships and kept people cordial or safe or any of those things that put people at risk. Women have gotten themselves into risky situations because they assumed that other people were acting in good faith or casual relationships were going to be normal. Men have been heartbroken because of not knowing how the social signals are supposed to go. There's lots of issues with our loss of formal rules for how we're supposed to engage with the opposite sex, and indeed with people of the same sex as well, with friendships. And that's really what Seinfeld is about, is that how do people operate with all of those rules gone, with all the formality of the sexual social relationship kind of untethered and freely floating about? How do you figure out how life is? And the awkwardness that arises from Seinfeld, the confusion that arises in a lot of these episodes, is the result of that loss of that. If you were to go back in time to like our grandparents or great grandparents, you would find that they had pretty strict rules about how to engage in social relationships, whether it was friendships with the same sex, friendships with the opposite sex, or romantic entanglements with the opposite sex. Romances were very formal because they had to be. You really needed to know how the romance was going to proceed. They went slowly for a lot of reasons. Before you had widespread birth control, you had to be really sure about your partner. You had to marry them. There's a lot of things that that went into that and were necessary for everybody to be able to be safe and secure in the relationship. And so once we have removed one part of that with the sexual revolution, a lot of the other things fall down as well, and we all end up very confused. So it turns out the Gen Z confusion over situationships and does she like me or not, that is nothing new. Turns out the more things change, the more they stay the same. As a 1980s kid, I experienced a lot of these things, though not to quite the same degree, not the silliness that you had in in this episode, but I've had friends who've had that where it's like, oh, she's coming in and she wants to stay at the apartment. It's like, so are you guys like hooking up or what? It's like, I don't know. I guess we'll see. It's like, is she sleeping on the couch? Do I need to like get some pillows out for her to sleep on the couch, or what's going on? And then, something happens maybe, and then it's like, oh, well, I thought this was a casual relationship. It's like, no, I thought this was a serious relationship. And so what you end up with as the modern social dynamic is, rather than a formalized, I'm going to court you, we're going to see if this romance is going to proceed, and we'll break it off if one of us doesn't want to proceed. And when that's broken off, we can actually remain friends. And I'll mention a fiction example that actually takes a little snapshot of the way these sorts of formal relationships used to work 100 years ago. But instead of having that, what ends up happening is people kind of fall through various levels of seriousness with their relationships with the opposite sex until they kind of reach a point where they're at equilibrium, or like one person, it becomes obvious that you have to talk about it, and one person wants something other than the other person, and you break it off. So yeah, you meet, you're kind of friends, you're acquaintances in a social circle, you hang out at a party, you maybe have an informal lunch, maybe you have a one-on-one coffee date, and at this point you're like, are we doing something? Do you want to go to like a movie or a concert? And then it's like, I guess we're dating. I guess she's my girlfriend. I guess he's my boyfriend. And then at some point, like, it's really formal. Like, yeah, we're exclusive. We're dating, we're having a sexual relationship. Then it turns into cohabitation. And then does it proceed to marriage from there? And some people are like, well, I was just happy with it being like this, and I didn't really think it would proceed to marriage, or I didn't care about it proceeding to marriage. And the other party's upset because they're like, I thought this was like directionally going to reach this marriage point, and you didn't think that, because there's no formal rules that dictate, okay, we're going to do these things and they get married, and that's how the relationship is going to proceed. People just kind of fall through various levels of casualness. And especially once you're in that relationship, people don't want to get out of it because there's like a sunk cost fallacy. It's like, I've been with this person for 2 years. I can't just like bail on this relationship, can I? I have to recover from this relationship. I've known multiple people that had long-term relationships, 5, 6, sometimes 8 or 10 years, and then realized that person was never going to progress and didn't really care about marrying them, just kind of wanted to be in a relationship, and they had to break it off. And then both parties got married later, right? Which meant that the party in question really didn't want to get married. That's why they weren't doing anything. That's why they weren't moving that forward, is they didn't want to marry that person. I think women end up in this situation where they think, oh, it's going to progress to marriage, and the man is like, well, I'm kind of getting the milk for free, so I don't really feel like getting married, or I'm afraid of getting married, or I want to be able to bail on the relationship, or like the relationship is kind of marginal, right? It's like, you're on the margin between permanent and temporary, and like it's convenient to live together, so we're doing that. I even had a friend, a very good friend, who fell into a cohabitation kind of against his will. Like the girlfriend stayed over and then just didn't leave. She just didn't leave, and then she started moving her stuff in. Then she just was living there, and he had never agreed to that. Right. And so he just didn't know what to do from there. And then eventually, that ended because that's not a great way for a relationship to really begin, is where people are not on the same page and not able to communicate about those things, of course. So anyway, I thought I would share that. Is like, that fiction is a snapshot into the way things were in around 1990, and they weren't all that different. What is different now is we have more ways of messaging. They're still doing that. They're leaving voicemails to each other, leaving answering machine messages. Like, how do I interpret this answering machine message? What did she tell you? Oh, no, it's not happening. She's not interested in you because she said these specific words. People, George and Jerry are like like hyper analyzing every word of what this woman said. And you can imagine young people doing the same thing with DMs, doing the same thing with texts, doing the same thing with like, he just left me on read. Well, maybe he just forgot to text you back, or he was in the middle of something and couldn't finish the text. It's like, I think he's doing that on purpose, right? Like, you can imagine a modern Seinfeld wouldn't be all that different in setup. It would just be different parts of the medium, different mediums triggering these questions and these situationships and these relationship difficulties and things like that. So anyway, that was, I guess, what I wanted to talk about. The fiction example from the distant past is actually Bram Stoker's Dracula. There is a chapter where one of the characters gets proposed to by 3 different men and only accepts the third one. Now, the 3 men are 3 very different men. They are all, I believe it's Lucy, right? They all love Lucy, and they all want to marry her, and they each propose. The doctor proposes, the Texan cowboy, Morris, proposes. By the way, like, you know, my mom's family is Morris from Texas, so it always has been interesting to me. My mom's maiden name and her whole side of the family, Morris. Cool. Anyway, and then finally, what's his name? He becomes a lord halfway through, right? So he proposes to her. Now, she rejects them. They're upset by the rejection. They really like her. They say so. And then what happens is that because that's a formal thing, they quickly like mourn that and recover and are all friends with each other. Not only are they all friends with each other, they work together to try to save this girl, and they work together to try to destroy Dracula as well after, after basically Dracula's able to turn her into a vampire. So the men aren't like, hyper emotional beings that get all bent out of shape about the fact that they proposed to a woman and were rejected. Rather, proposal was a very formal beginning of betrothal and was part of the courtship process, not something that is just a semi-formal step in between. We're in a very serious relationship and we're legally married, right? Which is kind of how modern relationships end up working. So it's just a really good example of like, these 3 dudes, or 2 of the 3 dudes got rejected. They were still good friends with each other afterwards, and nobody got bent out of shape about it because the formality of the relationship kept all parties kind of emotionally safe from there was emotional risk, obviously, to proposing, but it wasn't like, well, you were a piece of crap for proposing. I'm going to post this on Facebook, or I'm going to post this on Twitter about how embarrassing it was that you happened to dare to propose me. These sorts of things. Like, the guys risked love and they struck out, and they recovered from it because nobody tried to rub their face in it or make them feel bad for it or say that they were wrong for asking. Like, men shouldn't be shamed for asking a woman out. Now, a lot of men are like, why would I ask a woman out? Like, this could end badly because I could misinterpret the DM signals and say the wrong thing, and then I'll get blasted on Twitter or something as some kind of creep because I asked the woman out. Right? That's the way that we are now. And Seinfeld is that to a lesser degree, right? It's like, if I ask her out, it's going to be really embarrassing. Will this person get mad? Will this person get mad? Oh, she actually didn't like me. Oh, she really likes me, but I don't like her, right? Like, it's all the same stuff, just without social media and like, dating apps making it kind of like hyperbolically worse. So it'd be interesting to think of like a Seinfeld episode or like Son of Seinfeld that would take place in a modern period that would show the modern relationship problems. But I wouldn't think that the stories themselves would end up all that different. You'd have the same conflicts over mixed signals and wondering what you should do and where you formally sit with a relationship. So anyway, leave me your thoughts down below, down in the description. I do have a crowdfund. Here's a picture of it. King Leper hardback. It is a jacketed hardback. It's a big book, 540 pages. There's actually 3 books in it, but I'm doing it all as one volume. 50 signed copies. Of course, you can buy an unsigned copy if you want, or just the ebook through that crowdfund. It should be funded by the time you watch this video. I think we're going to fund on day 1, which is great. That's like the minimum threshold that I am not going to lose money. So I'll be able to print the books and I won't like lose all my money trying to fulfill this crowdfund. So I would love to continue that success and build it a little bit and give everybody a chance to get a signed hardback because I don't do book signings. So this is your chance to get something that's signed for me if that's something that interests you. By the way, if you do get the signed copy, you get a bunch of other ebooks as well. You get the first 2 ebooks in the series. Plus, I think all the Eternal Dream Legends books are in there as well. So there's like 5 or 6 extra ebooks. So check it out, and I will see you all next time. Have a great, great day.